What's up? It's Dave, it's Duncan from Metal Epidemic, back for another album review. Just as a duo, Kyle is still not here.
M-I motherfucking E.
He's in a cabin in the woods, probably having his throat slit at this point.
Yep. He should not have read from the Necronomicon. I mean, we did try and warn him.
Yep.
But you know what Kyle's like?
Yep.
Arsehole, I believe is what it is.
I was going to say, won't take no for an answer, but...
Arsehole, that's what they call them in Scotland.
Yep.
So.
Same. So, Duncan and I have been checking out a new album from a North Carolina punk band called Funeral Chic. The band's new album, Roman Candle, released on July 29th via Prosthetic Records. So this will be album number 3 from Funeral Chic, which follows up their 2018 album, Superstition. This album was recorded at Legit Biz in Greensboro, North Carolina, with engineer Chris Hilbert. Funeral Chic guitarist Robert Stroud oversaw the production, before the album was mixed by Matt Russell and mastered by Brad Boatwright.
We love you, Brad. We love you.
My man, Brad. So, out of the batch of albums that we were recording reviews for this week, this is the one that kind of surprised me the most, because I'd heard Funeral Chic before. I was like, oh cool,
right.
New Funeral Chic album, digging that. We'll be doing that for review. Nice one. I liked the last album, Superstition, from 2018, so I thought, I've got a rough idea of what's coming here on Roman Candle, but oh no, Duncan, Funeral Chic have pulled the old switcheroo.
Right, because you mentioned them as a punk band. I wouldn't instinctively call this a punk album at all.
Well, this is more punk than it used to be. This is...
So what did they sound like before?
So their last album, Superstition, they're kind of like blackened hardcore with power violence.
That's not on this
so,
album.
like...
that's not on this album at all.
No, visceral, hostile as fuck, no fucks given type sound. That's like Funeral Chic. And then when I was like, right, let's get into this, because I was expecting this G-force to hit me as soon as I hit the play button, and then the first track kicks in, Made in America, and I was like, where's the blast beats? Where's the breakneck riffs? Where's the scathing vocals? What's going on here? What's happening? Better read the press statement, David.
See, this is what you do, and then I sit here and you read it to me, which is always great because I don't like to read. Yeah,
so turns out Funeral Chic have been through something of a metamorphosis, a rebirth, if you will. The press release says, holding no desire to make the same album twice, they have eschewed the punk-led power violence that informed their previous work and have embraced the great tradition of American rock and roll.
Because that's what this is, by the way. That's why I was getting confused, because I wouldn't even call this a punk album. This isn't even like rock. This is rock. Yeah, it's maybe punky on the drums and maybe
punk rock.
Kind of bit of snarly attitude, but like there's a much more rock going on in this.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, as the press release said, they've put their own distinctive kind of Funeral Chic twist on it, which I would totally agree with.
We twisted it.
So this was a bit of a surprise, but a welcome one. So
no personnel changes?
No.
Like the whole band just like wholesale said,
"Yep,
fuck it."
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Listen, I'm down with that. I'm down with that. I think if you're going to make a movement, do it as a band. Yeah. Otherwise, don't fucking do it at all.
Actually, once I read that, I was like, I jumped right onto the fucking Metal Encyclopedia thing. I was like, surely this is like new members or like a completely different band or like the vocalist has been left on his own or something like that. Nope, same members. Nothing changed.
The vocalist has been left on his own.
Yeah, I don't know. So like I enjoyed the last album, but I kind of love this. Like the first time I listened to it, I was like, this is really cool. I really like this kind of direction they went in. And then every time I listen to it, I'm like, Yeah, I'm more into this now, and I'm even more into this. And then when I was like listening to other stuff, I was like, I want to go back and listen to that Funeral Chic album again.
There's a rawness in the
Yeah,
production that makes it really engaging.
Yes,
This sort
it
of
does.
music is usually polished to a level of, like, it's usually polished so much so that you can see your face in the songs. That's how fucking. That's how clean it is.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of authentically dirty about this in a way which I think makes it like very Moorish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's dirty, but it's their most accessible thing they've done, which is just
but when your accessible thing has been black and tinged violence score, like anything with a strokey melody in it is like a mark shift. So
I was like, this has got hooks. What is going on? Like gone are the blasts and the hyper furious guitars, and in its place you've got these like it's quite a dark album, but it's like it's got like. It's kind of like I was getting like kind of proto-punk type vibes. You've got like there's almost a kind of sleaziness to it as well. And again,
there's a kind of like a really like a kind of unwashed kind of hobo buck cherry vibe going on that I kind of love.
Yeah.
It's like if you took away all that kind of like all that like shag me music that they do.
Yeah, and
made it like just really, really, really filthy.
That's filthy rock and roll.
Yeah, I kind of love it. So
it's a very different combo of sound than I'm used to from Funeral Chic. But like when I was listening, I was like, this is like a more modern but dirtier Motörhead at times as well.
Vocally, it's hugely Motörhead.
Yeah. A lot of it has. The kind of pace and the kind of rhythm reminded me a lot of kind of Motörhead, and I don't want to say it's like I don't want to use the word blacken because that makes it sound like they're doing the whole like black and roll thing, which I don't think they necessarily are doing. But there are little sections of the riffs, and I didn't notice this until like multiple listens later. But there's little endings on the riffs that are like a little bit black metal, just the notes that they've picked. Or there's certain chords that they'll hit and be like, oh, that's kind of leaning into that kind of black metal kind of territory, and it's not an overpowering thing. It's very subtle, but it is there in the kind of background. As the more and more you can listen to it, you'll start to pick up on the little details. Also, some really interesting additional extras on here as well. There's some nice kind of like synthy kind of space, kind of spacey kind of synth work on tracks like Satisfaction, which also comes with a little bit of the smoky, sultry saxophone, Duncan.
This, like, the last two, like, see if you were a saxophone player, like, in the 90s and the 2000s, you were not getting your penis touched. Or your vagina fingered, right?
No.
It wasn't happening.
No.
See if you're a saxophone player mid-2010s, specifically in the 2020s, you're getting finger blasted and stroked off hard.
I mean, who doesn't love a bit of sax? You know what I mean? Like, it's like
literally one of my favourite instruments.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying that even with a degree of irony or anything. I love the tone of a saxophone, and I've always thought that, specifically in our world, it is a fucking crazy addition. Like, just to make sounds sound, just to make songs boost out. Yeah. And anytime it appears in anything, I am like a fucking laser hawk. Like, is that saxophone? Yes.
Yeah, and as soon as it appeared here, I was like, oh, yes. Now you're pushing my buttons, Funeral Chic. But also, it's actually really cool solos in this as well, which, again, I mentioned before, not really a solo guy. I'm a drummer. Guitars are a bit like, whatever. But on this album, though, really enjoyed the solos. My favourite one, though, was on Built to Love. Right at the end of that track, there's a kind of solo comes in. Quite traditional, but there's some nice, really subtle harmonies on it as well. There's kind of like, there must be two guitars, there must be another guitar comes in. It's very subtle, but really cool. I was like, oh, very nice, very well placed. And I think like all these little additions make this a far more interesting album than they've ever done before. I think it's really cool to hear that these guys have not just put out the same old thing as they've done before. They've constructed an album that for me has more personality to it, to be honest. Clearly has influences, but I think Funeral Chic have delivered something that sounds like them rather than, they just sound like another power violence band. One of the biggest and most impressive changes for me on this record, though, was the vocals of Ryan Lockhart. So if you listen to that last album, he is like a man possessed. Like, his voice is just shredding through that last album, just as you'd imagine for power violence and black and hardcore. On this album, though, like, he's gone to a vocalist that's, for me, a lot more instantly recognizable. Like, his tone and his delivery on this is absolutely brilliant. And I loved how kind of relaxed and just kind of normal it feels. Like, it doesn't sound like he's putting this voice on. And his style is absolutely, like, completely perfect for this more kind of like punky rock and roll sound I've got.
You need that in this sort of music.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, this sort of music lives or dies by the vocalist. And
yep.
there is EC of kind of punk rock bands out there that, like, the guitars, the drums, and all the stuff they're doing is fucking great.
Yeah.
And the vocalist doesn't have that quality and the tone that they're delivering, so ergo they're not interesting at all to listen to. It's
True.
not like other genres like death metal. You can have a relatively basic death metal vocalist, but if the band fucking shreds, you're instantly elevated, you're on a label and you're out touring.
Yeah.
This world, you need to be able to cut your chops. You need to have that. You'd look the front man. Honestly, it lives or dies in the front man in this world here. And you like, I've never heard them before, but I love the tone in this. It just sounded natural.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and just tons of personality to it. On the previous album, his vocals weren't about being catchy or like creating something like kind of hook laden. It was all about matching the intensity of the music. Here he's taken a completely different approach, and it feels like he's writing vocal parts that are going to stick with you a bit more. Tracks like Roman Candle or Ain't Going Nowhere there's plenty of moments during that album, or those tracks, or the little one-liners that you'll be singing in your head afterwards and not even realise. I think, like, if I had any like minor gripes, I'd say that, like, a couple of tracks have kind of similar kind of rhythmical similarities, which makes them feel slightly familiar on occasion. But I think vocally he does enough just to kind of differentiate them. I think in the last two tracks that they bring in really help with that kind of switch up as well. When I listened to the album, I've listened to it a ton of times, but when I listened to the album, I felt like Last Line Blues, I feel like I would have moved it a bit earlier in the album for me.
Yep.
If you know what I mean. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think towards the end of the album, I think it's lost in there. I think I would have brought it back a bit because it's completely different sounding.
Oh, it does. It's the one where things slow down.
Yeah.
Like, even the instrumentation is deliberately placed for that kind of rocky bluesy kind of tone, which isn't. It's in the same sphere as what they're doing, but it's a different style of execution. And because they're so authentic in the delivery, they authentically tackle it as that. It's not as if they're incorporating it to the rest of the sound. Yeah. They're doing the best version of that, and it is the penultimate song. Yeah. Whereas when Two-Headed Dog kicks back in, you're kind of like, it switches out of that. So it's not even as if the album was slowly heading that way. It's like this, something's different.
Well,
closing song.
So when I heard the two songs together, I was like, I would have kind of split them up. But then I didn't realise, but the last track, that Two-Headed Dog, is actually a cover. It's a...
Oh, right, well, that makes sense then.
Yeah, well, at first I was like, and it's a fucking amazing song. That last track, Two-Headed Dog, is so good. It's a guy called Rocky Erickson who did the original. And it's I didn't realise it was a cover. I'd never heard the original before. But they've absolutely nailed it. Like they've kept the tempo and the rhythm fairly kind of similar to the original, but there's a much kind of grittier sound of went with on the track, a bit more kind of lead work and stuff. But the chorus is just like fucking absolutely hook laden. I listened to the original as well. I actually prefer the Funeral Chic version, to be honest. Like if you're not singing along with that track at the end, then you're fucking dead inside. Because I was just like, this just totally had me. I thought it was a Funeral Chic song when I first heard it though, and then I was like, all right, wait a minute, it's a cover. But it kind of made more sense with the ending once I found out it was a cover song, that those two tracks at the end. But I'd still probably have pulled Last Line Blues earlier in the album if it was me. But that aside, production, the last thing I'm going to mention, production is fucking spot on, like bang on the money. This has character, It doesn't sound like this doesn't sound clinical or modern. It's got a lot of kind of old kind of punkier traits. It sounds very much like a bunch of guys playing in a room together. Like you can, if you listen to it, you can hear like the kind of ring of the cymbals in the background. You can hear the hiss from the microphones. It doesn't have like a silky smooth plastic finish. It feels very organic. So yeah, great direction of great choice of the direction and production. And obviously it's got the Brad Boatwright finish on it. So can't go wrong with that. I think this is one of their best releases to date. I found this way more satisfying than their previous releases. I think there's a lot more here that makes you just want to come back to it, and that's what I found. Like after the first couple of listens, I was like, yeah, I want to keep going back and listening to it. I really enjoyed it. What about yourself? What do you think?
Yeah, this is one like, so I don't have the context that you have. So to me, this is my first Funeral Chic album.
Right. Okay.
So I went in on the assumption that this is how this band sounds.
Right.
So like the kind of that whiplash that you got as a listener to like, this is the like I need to go and like hit the internet and all the rest. I didn't get that. I just took it at face value, and that like I had a ball with this. What I love about it is that I think, and it also answers a bit of a question for me that I had from what you've described. There's two songs on this out with Last Line Blues that are like not considerably heavier, but are heavier. Like the title track Roman Candle and Born to Kill are like less kind of punk rock and more kind of almost kind of like heavy kind of groovy sort of rock stuff. It's like just a really snarly, nasty sounding guitar, thick, like built in with those vocals, and that kind of made me think there was something, maybe there was some sort of influence coming from the kind of more kind of sludgy bluesy world than there was necessarily from any other direction. And now knowing that they have played things that are exceedingly more heavier, that kind of makes sense, but they're positioned really fucking well on the album. So just like, once again, I'm a big song placement guy. I think an album should very, very much like the best mixtapes, an album should be designed in such a way as a listener to always be interested, engaging, and carry through. Especially on a first listen, I don't want to feel like, I do often feel like I know where songs are going. Yeah. But I don't want to always feel like I know where an album's going. And the best albums to me are the ones that keep me on my toes without being unnecessarily unpredictable. And this one isn't. We've already touched vocally. I think he is channeling a bit of Lemmy here. I think it's difficult to move away from that. His vocal register is in that range. Lemmy, whilst not being the greatest vocalist in the world, really wasn't. You could see he was putting everything he did into it, and you get that here. There's that kind of sense of kind of organic, natural energy behind what he's doing, and it fits perfectly over what you're getting. The guitar work is great. Like this album has got hooks and grooves and riffs ahoy, and the production lends itself to that. The production be so easy to make this polished. You know what I mean? Like a couple of tweaks, a couple of refinements here, and then before you know it, this is a far more marketable album. Yeah. And I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, because the ones that kind of keep things a bit raw in this genre, I think, are the ones that are staying more true to the ethos behind it. And they have that in spades. It has a great, like as I mentioned before, it's a great flow. The writing is on point. Once again, it's not necessarily any styles that I haven't heard put together, but it's really, really, really well formed. Yeah. Even more so now that I know of the background, you know, the previous album, where it's coming from. And like we were talking about personnel changes, you either have to all be in on it, or there's kind of no point. It's like I always love hearing those stories about the Deftones, where like, well, this is Chino's album because he doesn't really want to do the kind of the detune Meshuggah stuff that Steven wants to do, so it's a Chino album. And then I listen to it and I'm like, well, if I didn't know that, you know, I'd be just as happy listening to it. So it kind of almost becomes a bit of who's leading the, like, I want like everyone to be on the same page, which they are here. If they weren't, the authenticity wouldn't be here, and the sound overall, it just fits. It fit, like, to me, listening to this for the first time, if you told me they had 4 albums out of this stuff before, I would totally believe that. There's nothing in this release that makes me think the band's experimenting, going in a new direction. It's like, it sounds like this has always been the sound. This has always been the way it's supposed to be. Saxophone. I mean, full stop. In fact, let's move that full stop. Let's say saxophone again and put a wee exclamation mark. It comes in. It would be so easy to use that more than once. It'd be so easy to litter that about the place. It's there to add poignance to a particular track, perfectly placed, hits the mark, and then it's gone. I love that. Once again, same with the kind of spacey sounds. Be so easy to use that as a kind of tool all the way through. Aids a part, and then it's not there anymore. Loved it. Like, it has. I'm glad you've clarified the thing about the cover song at the end. To me, it might actually go up half a point because of that. The Last Line Blues to me felt like an interesting penultimate track into a track which is so like killer and so like just fucking energy. It just felt like a misstep. Kind of almost felt like they should have either been swapped or whatever, but by that reckoning, that kind of makes sense. The last track would be from the band ipso facto Last Line Blues, which would make it the last track. You take it in a different direction, you kind of close out the sound and all the rest, and this would be the bonus track under a system which was still doing stuff like that, which we don't really get anymore because digital streaming, the days of like bands shoving a bonus track cover on there are kind of gone. So you just kind of have to take it on face value. So that makes a lot more sense. And also, once again, it shows a string to their bow, like in terms of Last Line Blues is the departure, not complete, like not to the kind of, once again, you're kind of shocked and stunned by it, but it's a more reserved track compared to the rest on there. But it's really, really, really well written. But I group that, like, to come from where they've came from to come into this is not just, it would be so easy to throw away as a gimmick, but there's a clear understanding of the kind of intricate nature of how you write music like this. And they've got it, like, across every instrument. It's not like, well, the guitarist wants to write a kind of punk rock album, so listen to it now. And the rest of the band are still doing the stuff they were doing before. Everyone is wholesale fit into that, assuming the roles are supposed to. It's very, very, very difficult to do, especially when you're jumping genres, that are not even right beside each other, but with a gulf in between. So, yeah, there's so much on here that is begging you to come back and listen to it. In a genre where most releases are kind of one and done. You know, you have fun listening to it. You maybe remember 1 or 2 choruses, but you might not come back to it again after that. This is the one that kind of stands out for all the stuff that we've mentioned. So
nice. So where would you score Funeral Chic's Roman Candle? This is one that I kind of like even more every time I hear it. The first few listens, I was like, this is an easy 4 out of 5, absolutely sorted. Now I'm like, I kind of like this more now. So I'm up at a 4.5 right now. Nice. I really enjoyed it. I think, like, for a band that have basically taken this style and sound and done it to this level on their first attempt is like, fuck's sake, that is impressive. And I'm really happy that they have decided to do that, because I think another album of what they did before would be cool. Like, they were good at that as well, but this just shows so much more kind of promise and potential from them. So yeah, I'm really excited to what these guys are doing next. But yeah, I can totally see myself coming back to this a lot. I've already listened to it a ton over the last kind of week or so. So yeah, it's a 4.5 for me. Really enjoyed it. What about yourself?
I'm coming in at a 4. I had a 3.5, mostly because I kind of felt the album end felt a bit clumsy. Right. But you've obviously now detailed why that is the case, and it's not that it's clumsy, it's just that they've put a bitchin' cover song. I really want to hear that original now. I like a bitchin' cover song at the end, which to me, I'm not going to hold that against them. They put it at the end of the album after what would be the natural closer, so kind of any issues I had there are removed. And just chatting about it as well, like, I've gained much more not necessarily respect, but appreciation for
Yeah.
what they've managed to do here.
Yeah.
From where they've come from, just by chatting about it. Yeah, it's a great album. Like, don't sleep on this. I will be supremely curious. Like, this is the Death Heaven thing all over again. Where their hardcore fan base go with a shift like this.
Yeah, true.
And hopefully they travel over, because like they are not this album isn't going to sell millions, so they're not doing it for monetary reasons. They're doing it because of artistic and creative reasons, which is the best and most authentic way to change a sound or grow as a band. We've already recorded tonight a review of Mantar.
Yeah.
And they've done exactly the same.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, they embrace a particular style or sound, which makes them, by default, maybe a bit more marketable, a bit more commercial, a bit more accessible, but have not lost any of that like grit behind it. And this album is full of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely full of that. This album is the equivalent of drinking Jack Daniels off a hooker's nipple. And I will leave it to your imagination if she washed before she poured.
There you go. I mean, if that doesn't make you want to listen to this album, then what will?
Don't know what I did.
Funeral Chic, Roman Candle, out on July 29th on Prosthetic Records. Links below to their Facebook, to the Bandcamp. Check them out. Let us know what you think. Have a little listen. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.